Okay, well, the numbers look like they're stabilising, so we might get started. Just while everybody's joining in, we'll just do our housekeeping notes in case you haven't seen another session already. If you'd like to ask a question, which I'm sure you will during this session, click on the Q&A button. The chat button's been deactivated, so we just have one channel of questions coming in. Ask as many questions as you want. We'll try to address them during the session. If we don't, we will try to address them after the session. You shouldn't be able to unmute yourself. Only the panelists will be able to talk. And we will be recording all the sessions. So if you miss some, the baby cries, the dog barks, whatever happens in the middle, you'll be able to come back and watch the recording afterwards. So I'll hand you over to two lovely ladies, Heidi Gempel and Shannon Knapp, who will take you through the market segment session. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks. Hi, Heidi. Nice to see you again. Long time no speak. It's been only an hour. If you signed up, everyone, to reimagine your market segments and hear all about market segmentation from a revenue management perspective, then you are in the right place. So just a little bit about us. Heidi, tell us a bit about yourself and why it is you're so informed on this subject.
Well, my name is Heidi, and Heidi Gempel, and I have my own little company. After many years of working in the industry, property, regional, corporate leadership in revenue management, I set out to build my own company because my heart is really for smaller chains, independents, to help and assist them so they have the opportunity to get the same sort of knowledge that you have in a larger brand from a corporate office strategy point of view. So that was 10 years ago, and I haven't had a job. I left my last paid job was literally 10 years ago, and I've been at this for the last 10 years, and it's been a very interesting journey, lots of very interesting clients and projects. And so what qualifies me for this, we've done it many, many times over. We've had lots of discussions across many wide spectrum of hotels. And it's just something I'm very passionate about, and I just love talking about. So yeah, so that's why we do it today.
Very good. And yeah, we'd like to share this little bit about ourselves, and not because, especially I don't want to age myself, but I think it just helps understand context and how it is that Heidi and I are so informed and passionate on this subject. And so you understand, our perspective is that, I come from quite a few years of hotel experience, and my last job before I started my consulting company was with Accor and with Radisson and Carlson before that. So, and same as Heidi, I work with small chains of hotels, but also with independents. And they all have a lot of things in common. And the most common thing they all have in common is that they're hospitality professionals who are in the interest of profits. So if profit is your goal and you want to learn or equally passionate about market segmentation, you're in the right place. So, so you know what to expect in this session. We had asked you in the lead up, you were asked to have these figures on hand for your property. And this is so that you can directly relate the discussion to in your own business context. That way it's not an abstract or in a theoretical way thinking about revenue management. Isn't that right, Heidi?
Yes, that's right. That's right. It really is more for you to have a reference to understand, from a market segmentation point of view, how did you perform last year? And as we speak to certain points, to help you with some, maybe, to pose some questions, to just go a little bit deeper. So you don't have to share these numbers with us. Absolutely not. It's really more for you to reflect.
Yeah. And I think everyone knows what to expect, but Heidi and I will have a chat and share some insights for a little while, 45 minutes, and then we have left time for some questions, as Jackie mentioned at the beginning, so make sure you use that Q&A function, and we'll share some insights and understanding on the fundamental intent and purpose and the importance of market segmentation in the first place, and then also some practical steps on how to reevaluate what might be some shifts and changes in market segmentation. So I always think it's quite important for us to remember that this topic is not unique to hotels. I know as hoteliers, we like to think that we're unique and everything we do is unique to every other industry on earth. But any business that has more than one customer or more than one way to find their product, this topic is important and very poignant. So now Heidi will get us started by outlining the fundamental definition and purpose of what market segmentation should be in your business. It's always a good place to start to get everyone on the same page, right, Heidi?
That's right, that's right. And it's very important that we start establishing language so we all know when we refer to market segmentation, what it is we actually are talking about. So always helpful. We've got quite a few people, nationalities, not, you know, for some of us, English is not our first language, like in my case. So let's start. What is market segmentation? And it is really very, very important to understand this. And a lot of our other functions, especially in revenue management, are very closely tied to our market segmentation. So the market segmentation is critical. It's a little bit, you know, when you have, the spine on your body, in your body, every limb comes off your spine. Your arms, your legs, your head, everything is put on that spine that carries you hopefully throughout your life and very healthily. But this is a little bit what market segmentation is to our business. It is
analogy. I love that.
Yeah, it is business critical. And the most successful businesses, they drive their business, they drive their strategy based on their segmentation. So which then alludes to the fact if you get your segmentation wrong, your business is not performing at its optimum. So, and like you mentioned already, Shannon, everyone has it, so we mustn't be worried about, you know, is this just specific to us? No, every business has it, every industry has it, it's the same. Now, market segmentation is also a decision-making tool. So it is, it could be, you know, considered, or it could sound a little bit abstract, but it's actually something very, very practical. Once you have set your market segmentation, it helps you make decisions, because this is a certain way you look at your business. So it becomes very practical, and your marketing plans, your strategy plans, they're all built around your market segmentation. And then finally,
the other way around, right? Not otherwise it's backwards, and I see that from time to time where it's the exact opposite, other way around, and it's not right, is it?
Yes, that's right. And when we did ask in our pre-questionnaire, you know, do you do your planning, your strategies, your forecasts around segmentation, we were very elated to hear that most of you actually do that. And that is good news, because that is really for sure fundamental and best practice. And then lastly, the third point on this one is you can imagine your market segmentation a little bit like if your business is a pie, a cake. Your market segmentation is the slice, is the sizes of the slices within your cake. So you literally take your business and you turn it into a, you know, into a round pie chart, if you like, and you say, okay, what is the size of this market segment versus that market segment? So it's a very easy way to understand what market segmentation is. There are lots more very complex and detailed and scientific ways of doing it. But this one is like a spine with its limbs coming off, and the other one is like a pie with the sizes of the pie in it. So this is how I like to remember it, and I think it's it gets etched into your memory. So then the next slide already, we're moving on to why is it necessary? Why are we coming up with a session during this ROC conference on market segmentation? Well, we've gone through an awful lot of change over these last few months. Some of our hotels are closed. Some of them were closed. Some of you may still be considering of closing your property. So it is a really critical juncture for us in the industry, and for most industries, but you know, we're specific to hospitality. So why is it important? It is because of all these changes that we're experiencing around us that we need to change it. So we have experienced huge changes in travel patterns, even pre-COVID. So in 2019, even the frequency of travel, the reason why people travel. And if you were just on that session with the economist Tom, was it? I think he also mentioned that people they generally now they like to combine their business travel with some leisure components. So all of this has changed over the last 3 years. This was not the same 10, 15 years ago. So that's number one. Number two, the fragmentation of our industry. We're going through huge changes. We have huge opportunities. If you follow the news, you know what's going on with the OTAs at this moment in time. You know, if you, again, you may know that Lufthansa is no longer using GDSs to actually sell their tickets. There are huge changes, and the fragmentation of the industry is enormous. So all of that has caused to disrupt our business and how we access our customers and who they are and how they actually book us. I alluded already to this leisure travel a little earlier. This whole aspect of business and leisure coming together. So you could be doing maybe some corporate, some work on a Thursday, Friday, or on Friday your spouse arrives and you have an extended weekend. Or you could just extend it with some personal time, maybe just extend half a day on your corporate travel. So there is a lot of change in that. The motivation is changing, and the whole landscape around this is changing. And then lastly,
I point that one, and I've noticed that the combination of a business and leisure trip has been around certainly for a while, and has been important in our industry. Whereas I think in the past, leisure trips used to be a luxury, and I think what I'm seeing is that it's starting to become now much more of a necessity, isn't it? So that could be a big shift in segmentation for some properties, I think.
Yes, very much so. You're absolutely right. I think there's a huge transformation happening, and particularly with the millennial workforce, or the millennials coming into the workforce and going on these business trips. For them, the whole leisure aspect is hugely important. And for them, this corporate travel is really one of the perks of the job that they aspire towards, right? So the whole aspect is changing a little bit. And then the last one, but I mean, we all have been disrupted by these devices significantly. Our lives have changed depending on your age. I may give your mine away at this moment in time, but my life is no longer the same since the emergence of an iPhone, an Android, or one of those smartphones. So this digital disruption has been huge, and in hospitality, it has changed the way people access our information about our hotels, how they book us, how they engage with us, how they communicate with us. Social media has changed all of that, and because of that, we need to go back. And a lot of the hotel companies are still using very traditional or old school, from previous days. Still using those market segmentations to segment their customers, and it may be just time to validate. You don't necessarily need to change them, but at least work through the exercise of reviewing them. So that's really the reasons that I think this is important.
That's right. And as Heidi has outlined, and it won't be news to anyone that so far everyone will know well what 2020 has handed us so far. And so what we want to consider is how this has already and how it will continue to impact hotel market segmentation. So it's not news that travel and travelers have changed. The reasons for travel, there's some new ones. People need to reconnect with family. As a species, we're social people. In as much as this virtual conference is fantastic, I noticed some of the CEOs and revenue leaders in the opening session this morning were talking about how great it will be once we can do even this revenue optimization conference in person again and reconnect in a closer way with people. And leisure guests and our guests are exactly the same. People want to get out of their houses. They want at the same time to feel safe and secure. So it's a very specific mix of new reasons for travel. And so certainly in that case, we might need to reimagine what segmentation looks like, or even invent entirely new ones. And all of this is in order to maintain, of course, our gross operating profit per available room, and certainly even enable net RevPAR growth, because that's what it's all about for our owners. And so certainly, all of this, we should see some benefits of reviewing, and I don't know if renovating is the right word, Heidi, but these are some of the benefits that we might see as a result of this work, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think the first one, the most important one, and if you're a revenue manager, it may not be always on top of your mind, but our market segmentation really should help us to understand our customers better. So as you go on this journey, as you decide to go on this journey, it will really help you to understand them, to see what motivates them, and what are the needs that we're trying to meet, and how can we better meet those needs, and how can we better plan for them, how can we better attract them, what do we have to do, which then will obviously bring us to this point of that we can increase our marketing dollars, the efficiency of it, so that we can do the whole planning process a little more specific, because we understand where our customers are meeting socially, we understand how they communicate, we understand what motivates them, and I think that will have a huge impact on the efficiencies of your marketing dollars, and that is always important, particularly in this day and age. And the last thing we've got on this list here is that it will really help us identify new trends and new behaviors. In a session earlier, we spoke about forecasting and the whole aspect of how do we forecast in this time and season. And if we still look at our customers through these outdated glasses, if you like, it's like if you need glasses and then prescription no longer works. So you put the glasses on, but it's still blurry.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit like that. So you can identify it easier. You can see it faster. You're quicker to take your changes to market. And I mean, the list is long, but these are really some of the 4 key ones that when we worked through this, where we thought, no, we really need to draw attention to those, Shannon, right?
And this better understanding of our customers seems like perhaps a very subtle and obvious point, but it's so important. It's so easy for us, I think, as hoteliers, and I see it all the time, where we tend to make revenue segmentation, even pricing decisions based on what we think and based on how we would make a purchase, or how we might make a reservation decision, or how we as a hotelier might select a hotel, but we are not our customers, right? So we have to get into the minds of our customers, because they don't always think the way we do. I mean, the way that I select a hotel is very different, because I usually look for a deal from a client, but we have to get into the minds of our customers. And gosh, that's important. And Heidi, the point you make about increased efficiencies of marketing spend here, I mean, now more than ever, that's a pretty tough case to make these days, to convince a general manager, financial controller, or an owner to invest in marketing. And so that's why, it has to be absolutely laser sharp, efficient, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And because of this, the whole aspect of it, we also felt compelled we should tell you about the considerations. Be realistic about changing your market segmentation.
Not to enter it lightly.
Do not enter into it lightly, or do it at your own peril, I would say. But it really is that you consider what it is that you want to achieve with it before you start the process, because otherwise you'll end up being very frustrated and unhappy, and the whole thing will fall flat. So just some of those considerations that you should have as you go through that thought process. First one up. Anyone who is married understands marriage takes commitment, it takes work, but it is beautiful if well done. So market segmentation is a little bit like that. It is a marriage. It is something that you commit to for a longer period of time. And if you've worked in the industry for any amount of time, you know how many times has any one of the companies you've worked for changed their market segmentation. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen often, and it doesn't happen regularly. So it is a long-term thing. So just be aware of this, that if you make a change, it needs to be one that sort of, at least for the next foreseeable future, for the next, for this next decade or so, we're saying, okay, this one will help me slice and understand my business. The next one, and we're stressing this because it's important. Changing a market segmentation is not changing codes in the PMS. That may be the very last point, and it's an important point, and I'm not knocking it, and I'm not saying it's not important, but that is not what this exercise is about. So for if you want to change your market segments, it will be costly to you. It will take time, it will take effort, it will take research that may cost you some money. So when you go into this, just be prepared that it will take time, effort, money, and then your time is money. So just be aware of that. The third reason we've listed here, if you think there is a case for you to change your market segmentation, think about it from a point of view, will it bring you higher profits? Will it increase your capacity to drive greater results? If it doesn't, don't bother. So it really is something that you must open into this eyes wide open. If it is just about enhancing a few things on your PMS, call it something different, but not changing your market segmentation, because that is not what it is. If you change your market segmentations, it goes very deep and it's very long lasting. Which is also why the last point we put this last specifically, actually, it's because of the significance of the changes that you're making. Your senior leadership has to be in agreement with it. Now, your CEO, your GM, your senior leadership does not necessarily need to understand point by point or every segment in its detail, or why you recommend this and that in the greatest detail, but they need to be able to relate to the changes that you're recommending, and they need to be convinced by the data that you're presenting. So this is, you just need to know, okay, if we do this, this is how we do it, and it can be done, but you ought to execute it in a structured manner. So that's really some of the considerations.
That's right. And this is the case when we talk about organizational structures and senior leadership. This is the case whether you're a 5,000 room property or 500 or 50, or no matter what size of your property or your organization, there are always going to be stakeholders and senior leadership. And that could be an owner operator who lives on site, or it could be a general manager, or it could be your wider brand management, and at all levels of the leadership, don't you think?
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to talk about this actually next, because there are some criteria, and these are questions that you must answer as you go through that process. And some of them to maybe a greater degree or with greater level of detail than others. But it is as you work through a set of criteria like these ones here we've listed, it will become a lot more attainable. It will become something where you say, yeah, I can see that, no, this particular segment that I saw does not qualify in that area. So we listed 6 criteria. I'm going to talk you through them one by one, that you can use in the process. So the first one is that your segment needs to be homogeneous. Homogeneous is a mouthful of a word, but what it actually means, it basically means that the people or the customers that you put in that segment, they need to be similar from within. So if you have a particular segment, the customers that go into that segment, they need to have similarities. So there could be similarities around price sensitivity. There could be similarities around seasonality. There could be similarities about what else? Other measurable components. So within the segment, they need to be similar. Which then leads us to the second point, that between the segments that you're deciding, they must be diverse, they must be distinct. Mm-hmm. So one segment cannot be similar or overlapping, should not be overlapping the second one. So whilst they're similar within one segment, they must be distinctly different as segments. Otherwise, you get too confused. Front office doesn't know what to do. Reservation doesn't know how to enter the booking, and you don't know how to measure or how to interpret the relationship or the behavior of one segment versus the other. So they need to be homogeneous within and distinctly different between the segments. The third one is, and this one is where you will have to have some guidelines. You have to actually measure it. You have to set up some numbers. Large enough, and whatever large enough means to you, that's for you to set as a standard, right? But you need to decide on is the segment large enough? The segment that you'd like to pull together, is there enough purchasing power behind from the consumer point of view? Is there enough growth opportunity? Very important. If it is it a segment that may be small right now, but you see going forward that is a trend that there will be growth in that segment, and you have strategies to put in place in order to see that grow. Is it profitable? If it's not profitable, don't worry, don't bother.
Yes.
Is it a stable segment? Is it just something that's going to stick around for a little while, right? So it's that large enough segment. Is it worth your time? Because everything we just mentioned over these last 15, 20 minutes is about your entire strategy you build around your market segment. So if you build a market segment, it will be irrelevant 18, 20 months from now. Why bother? So the large enough side of it. The next one, and this is again something that is very dear and close to my heart and to our hearts, I know, is your market segmentation needs to match your organization. So with that, for example, I mean, if you are in a events hotel and you have one segment that covers conference and events, and you have 3 segments that cover leisure and maybe corporate travel, is a problem if 60% of your business is events. So you must match the segmentation to the type of business that you have. If you have a resort and you have only one wholesale segment that holds 60%, 50%, 40%, anything above 15 to 20% as a single segment, you need to start looking at who is actually going into that bucket and why is there only one bucket? Are they truly all the same? So these are the kind of questions. So it needs to match your organization.
Those always make me giggle, Heidi, and I bet you've seen this too. It always makes me giggle when I see the first draft of a budget that has 15% of its annual room nights in a category called other.
Yes. And
it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Particularly if you then don't have any subsegments that would explain these little ones, right? So yeah, I agree. Yeah. The next point, we're almost down to the last one now. Your segments must be identifiable. So that means that you must be able to, the profile of the client that you create, or the profile of the kind of traveler that you create, you actually must be able to spot them in the marketplace. So there is no point for you to come up with people you think, or people that wear glasses deserve their own segment. But I'm extreme now, but to prove my point. But you must be able to identify customers in the marketplace. If you cannot identify these travelers in the marketplace, how are you going to reach them? So it's then must be identifiable, because then the next point and the final point on the slide is really they must be reachable. You must be able to connect with them. You must have resources in place already. If it is a segment where you don't have distribution, technology, people, self-support, whatever it is in place, if it is something that you're cooking up all by yourself, and you don't even know how to reach them, you're going down the wrong path. So it needs to be, so ideally, the market segments that you sketch out should tick each one of those boxes.
That's right. And I think particularly on the reachable criteria, Heidi, I always like to remind revenue managers in particular to call upon the resources and talents of the wider team, especially, you mentioned the sales force there, and marketing managers as well. I mean, something Heidi and I like to repeat often is that revenue management is a team sport. It is not an individual discipline, it's a team sport. You cannot do it alone, and nor should you even want to. And I think with a lot of these criteria, finding reachable segments in particular, your sales team will have a lot of ideas and resources, and they're a resource themselves, about getting access to these segments and how to get more out of certain segments, don't you think?
Yeah. So excellent. A perfect segue into that session, Shannon. Shannon is going to talk us through now a little bit of the process, or the thoughts that should go into your process and the framing of it. So Shannon, why don't you talk to us a little bit about updating the actual process, or the actual steps that we should be considering?
Yeah, we like to use the word frame because it makes me think of a foundation. And when we think of building a house, or even in fact building a hotel, for anyone who's had the joy of being on an opening team of building a new hotel, you have to start with the foundation first. And so how would I frame a market segment? And this is really the same if you're opening a brand new hotel, or if you're reopening a hotel that has either been in effectively closed so far in 2020, or in single digit occupancies. So some of the things that you would need to consider as part of framing up or building a market segment is, of course, who are they? Things like the geography they come from, the size of the population and climate, and I think Heidi mentioned before some political aspects that might be happening in the source market for where these segments and these travelers might be coming from. How will they get to you? And that can mean physically, planes, trains, and automobiles. How far are they going to travel and how are they going to reach you? Certainly that's impacting, maybe temporarily, but maybe for as long as the next 24 to 36 months in some markets, how guests are getting to our hotels is changing for sure. Psychographics, that's just a fancy word really, and it just means a qualitative methodology to describe the traits of us as humans on our psychological attributes that have been applied to the study of values and opinions and interests and lifestyles, all of which is just exactly market segmentation. I'm sure every revenue manager knows that somewhere buried in your job description it says part-time amateur psychoanalyst, right? That's part of revenue management job description, isn't it, Heidi?
Yeah. People is at the very core of our business.
That's all market segmentation is. And then of course the behavioral aspects. This is part of the things we have to consider. So the features and benefits of a property, the features that are going to be of most value to certain types of segments, and then loyalty. You know, there's still, maybe more so than ever, I think people are, there's still a lot of points junkies out there that like to collect their goodies and collect the benefits for returning. And, you know, loyalty, I think, maybe more so than ever. I mean, it's always been important in hotels, but the early returners, and at least for the properties that I'm seeing in the US and certainly in Australia and New Zealand as well, the guests that are returning first are the loyal ones. They're the guests that have used a property or a brand or even an independent hotel before, because I think it's about safety and comfort and familiarity. And I think that will continue to form part of the psychographics of segmentation. So the key initial elements of the process include some of which Heidi has already outlined, but certainly identifying the fundamental intent and purpose of segmenting your markets in the first place. Collecting data, of course, we're going to have to collect data on each of these segments as we form their profile and rep strategies and tactics around getting more of these segments. And certainly some of the obvious sources of data would be your property management system and online travel agent extranets, and certainly channel managers, and lots of different possibly obvious sources of data. And I think a very powerful, plentiful source of market segmentation as well, and guest behavior, is our own hotel staff. So please remember them. Front of house staff, even our housekeeping personnel. And I know that might sound a little bit funny, but remember that they're out amongst our guests 100% of their time, and they're constantly observing and collecting data on guest preferences, guest feedback, guest behavior, all of which forms part of the profile of entire segments of our business. And so also, you know, tapping into that source at all levels of the business, front of house, housekeeping, everywhere, ensures that you're building a very strong revenue culture across your organization.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. That the whole thing comes back to the revenue culture in your property, and how do you help push forward and make it a team sport, right? Make it something where everybody can get involved, everyone has something to say. We all have different perspectives from our clients, and the best way for us to utilize it and optimize our business is by listening and by taking that into account. So I think that's so good, yeah.
And I bet we could probably do a study, Heidi, and through analysis, and prove that hotels where the housekeepers know how to calculate RevPAR are the most profitable. We should do that as a study. I bet we could prove that's true. I bet we could prove it's true. And also the guests, right? This might sound pretty obvious, but a really powerful, really accurate way to find out about what guests want and what they value is to ask them. So, you know, I mean, certainly surveys and, you know, post-departure scores and TripAdvisor scores. In fact, Jackie and I are doing a session later on NPS scores and how to calculate your net promoter score on yourself and also on your competitors. But actually having conversations as a revenue manager, I mean, general managers are often out there amongst it as well, but actually talking with them, it's pretty simple, really powerful source of data.
I think it's then learning to harness the information, particularly your concierge, your doorman, your front office staff, as they engage with the customers, and how do you harness that data and build it into something substantial and meaningful. That'll be the question and the challenge of it, right?
That's right. I say, you know, show me a doorman that knows the importance and how to calculate net RevPAR, and I'll show you a profitable hotel. So further elements of the process is to develop, again, through these, you know, data research, a way to size each segment. And going back to what Heidi already outlined, which is about ensuring that it is a significant enough part of the continued and future profitability of the property. Traditionally, in the olden days, as in BC, before COVID, each of those segments needed to be proven and demonstrated to be significant enough to focus the efforts. And that's absolutely true, as Heidi and I have been saying, that has not changed. But I think these days we might need to leave a little bit more room to experiment, because the way that segments respond and the way that certain types of guest or segment profiles will respond in the marketplace might have changed. And so as you go through the process of updating or renovating your market segmentation, you might find that it's already absolutely perfect and not a single thing needs to be updated or changed. I would be shocked, and I think Heidi and I would love to hear from anyone out there that goes through the process of updating your market segmentation and you find that not a single thing needs updating or changing. Have you ever seen that happen, Heidi?
Not without an awful lot of discussion, but
Yeah. We would love to hear from you if that's the case. And just the last few things to think about, different elements of this process as you go through it, is to develop you know, how each of these segments, the positioning, so certainly the position in your marketplace, price point position, but also the position in your budget. Consider if the product offering, and that's not just room types, but the product offering for various experiences in your property, is going to be suitable for that segment. And then if changes need to be made, you know, I like to shine a light on this innovation as a concept, as part of market segmentation, because I know innovation is most often used in reference to our tech stack. So it's, you know, which booking engine are we using, which BI tools and which PMS and channel managers and things. But innovation is equally important in revenue and marketing management as well, because it means innovative thinking. It means innovative means of collecting data, innovative methods of finding and converting new segments of the business. And this last point here with the M's, market, monitor, measure, and repeat, this is just a way of highlighting that, you know, market segmentation is not an event like this event we're having today. Market segmentation and updating it is a process, not an event. So if you go through this whole process and analysis, and you should see some results of that. And so now Heidi will take us through some of what should be the expected results of all of your efforts and some of the things that should include.
yes. So the first results and or consequence of a step like this, and I think we have a question. We've just had a question come in on that as well, Shannon. Is that when you change your market segmentation, and because of the way most PMSs are structured or most systems are structured, it means historical data loses its relevance. Now, you have to evaluate, and with that, I think I'm going to sort of answer or speak to that question that Yvonne asked in the text chat. With that, I think you need to evaluate what is more important to you. If you feel that your current market segmentation is delivering you the best results, and this comes back to the conversation and the discussion that you need to engage in as a team.
Yeah.
If you go through this, you have to make certain decisions based on the understanding that yes, we may lose historical data pertaining to this. But I think if you do the process properly, or if you go through that whole aspect, and what we're talking about is a process that will take 2-3 months. It is not something that happens after one meeting and one discussion. There's conversations to be had. So you have to make that process. And Yvonne, maybe we'll speak about this in a little while, in more detail. But yes, historical data may lose its relevance. You also probably realize that you have to make modifications to existing product offerings. And again, it could be your room types, it could be your rate offers, it could be your distribution channels, it could be all of these different things where you have to just make modifications in order to attract this particular segment that you are trying to target. So these are just, again, it's a consequence of that process. The next one on that list, if we can hit, is it will affect your pricing policies. So you know, at the moment we have literally relinquished all cancellation policies and anything that could cause the client not to cancel his bookings free of charge. So hopefully we will get over this, and we will get back to the fact where we can fence products and we can create different policies in order to attract different kinds of clients. So it will also then affect your booking channels, your OTAs and things like that. So you just have to be aware some systems do not support all of it. In some OTAs can only support certain products. So you just have to consider all of these things and the ramifications of the choices that you're making.
Yeah, and I would like to think that, to that point, Heidi, I would like to think that, you know, our OTAs and even channel managers and some of our other support providers and vendors are adapting as customers are adapting. And if that means that some of those very important elements you just described that can't support some of these changes, you know, we're seeing some of those updates and adaptations happening. So hopefully that will be at a speed that that the customers are evolving. Hopefully those elements will adapt at the same rate.
I mean, to be honest, you know, I think particularly with what we do and how we engage the industry, right? I think it's a good thing. I think it's something that hoteliers are pushing the envelope. We need to be a little more pushy with these OTAs. We need to be more pushy with our technology.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, so I think it's a good thing to go through the exercise, and if you think it's worth the risk, if you think that the benefits will outweigh these risks or the changes that you have to make, possibly changing vendors because of the change that you feel so strongly about, that's a good thing. That's a really right. Need something in the industry very, very desperately at this time in season. Yep. So then it goes into next one is your communication and sales engagement with your market segment. So if you create a market segment, how are you going to support it? How are we going to reach out to those customers? Who is looking after them? So the communication and the sales engagement goes with the last point actually, which is your internal sales structure. So one of the things, and we come across this a lot, is that revenue managers are in charge of OTAs. Now, if OTAs are a significant portion of your business, and with that I mean possibly 20 or more % of your business, and the revenue manager is in charge of this. I know I don't even need to talk anymore about this. I know the manager is not doing what he's supposed to do, because he's essentially doing the job of a sales manager. Now, it happens to be a very technical sales channel, I get that, but if you're a revenue manager in a property and you also look after the OTAs, I know that you cannot do everything that you're supposed to do in revenue management because you are busy making these OTAs work. So it's one example, right? another example I have in one of our clients, we had a situation where the corporate sales team, local corporate sales team, 3.5 people were basically contributed 15% of the business. Revenue management, managing digital channels and the website, generating one person, 45% of the business. Something is loop-sided. So it means that you may have to, I'm not saying you need to get rid of the sales team. Do not hear that, please. I'm not saying that.
No, I don't think people would hear that, Heidi. And it's a good point, because it's not about, you know, reducing staff. We're all about increasing jobs in hospitality, but it's more about aligning skill sets to the right place so that people can do what they're good at, what they enjoy, and where they're going to be the most effective.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And this is, I think, where we as an industry, we're at a juncture, and I know later on there's another session on opportunity crisis, right?
Yeah.
We're at a juncture where we can change a lot of the things that over this last, let's say, 10, 15 years, where we have been subjected to a lot of technology from the outside of the industry, directing our business on our behalf. I think we have opportunity, and I think, you know, we should really ask some tough questions, and we have to ask these questions by looking at our customers and how they behave and how they book us, which ends up in our market segmentation.
Yeah,
so,
that's right. And, you know, armed with good information and a good, you know, set of having the right perspective, I think we can do that. And I mean, what better time to do it?
That's right, that's right. So as such, I mean, we've really now talked a lot about it. We actually do have a few questions, but Shannon is going to just speak a little bit about the takeaways that we wish or we hope you have from this section. If you have any other takeaways, we'd like to hear about those as well. But Shannon, why don't you do those?
Just for a sec, it's 10 to the hour, so we've got to be really fast because we're meant to start the next session.
Sorry. Really fast then. So top few things we want everyone to take away and remember and commit to memory. What we really want you to remember is to elevate your entire perspective on the importance of market segmentation and where it should sit in your mind and in your daily work. We also hope you are motivated to take a fresh look and evaluate your market segments. Again, if you do this evaluation work and you find they're perfect, Jackie and Heidi and I would love to hear from you, and we'd love to help you go through that process. Your segmentation, of course, needs to match your business and also to match the profitability goals and commitments of your owner, of course. And again, market segmentation is a verb. It's a process, not an event. You'll go through these exercises and then you'll repeat. And when in doubt, seek support from your colleagues, from HSMAI, from Heidi and I, and seek support from the talent that's around you. So I think, Jackie, Heidi, do we have a couple of questions we have time to answer now?
Yes, actually we do. Jackie, is it okay if I read one out?
Yeah, just maybe one, because unfortunately we're getting really tight on time.
I warned you this was a subject we were very passionate about, Jackie.
Yeah, I know.
20 hours.
Okay, so we had one question on the, you know, what about losing the data? So I think we spoke to that a little bit.
Oh, yes.
We just need to make the right decision. The other question, maybe, Shannon, if you'd like to take this, with so much discussion about market segments for the last 10 years, why does the industry still have these standard market segmentation definitions? What's your take on that?
Well, I think it probably has to do with the worst possible answer, which is because we've always done it that way.
Oh,
I know, it's the worst possible.
I hate that answer.
I know, it's horrible. But also because I think that it seems, unless you have the support and the skills and some specific activities to do to go through market segmentation, it might seem too hard, too technical, and absolutely too complicated and insurmountable. And it actually really isn't. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So I think if we just remember that market segmentation and the evaluation and changing of it and updating of it is complex, but not complicated.
Yeah,
Heidi, what do you think? Do you think there's another reason why?
Well, I think it has to do with the sheer complexities of our setup in hospitality, right? We have system upon system, generally, in some cases linked with some interfaces, in many cases in complete silos.
Yeah.
And I think the sheer effort for us to actually go through that process, so far was never really worth our time because it worked. You know, why fix what ain't broke, what's not broken? So that's not optimal. So I think a big reason for that in the industry is that it was the technical transformation, this digital transformation, I think, is a huge reason for it to be reevaluated. The changes that are happening post-COVID and how not just hospitality, but literally every industry will be disrupted, will cause our market segmentation also to change because people are going to do things differently. So I think, I mean, it's a whole other discussion on this, but I think these are some of the key reasons. But we would love to engage with you on this one if you would want some more insights on this.
Maybe we can try to send the answers to the people in the session to the other questions that we didn't get time to get to. The slides will be in the session now. If attendees want to go back and download the slides, you'll have the contact details for the two ladies there on the last slide. That'll be available to download in the platform. So thanks everybody. Sorry to rush the girls because it would have been good to keep going, but we've got another session in 5. So, and actually I think one of you are on it, aren't you?
Yes.
Fabians? Yes. Okay. We'll see you soon. Thanks everybody. Bye.